Hello and welcome. Welcome being an interesting word to use to AVW Radio Live. I am your host, Chris. It's been a while. Hope you're all as well as can be expected on this most wonderful of days. Let me introduce you to my panel first of all, and we will waste no time in getting to the dissection because I think that's probably what I'm going to call it today of the Brighton match. So first of all, it's the man behind all the knobs. It's Mr. John Welsh. Hello, John.
Hi, Chris. Good to have you back, mate.
Thank you. Not sure everybody will agree. I'm not sure even I agree, but we'll see how that goes.
Already very happy to see you back.
God bless them all. I love them all as well. And great honour, John, as I'm sure you'll agree. A legend is on the radio show. It's a good afternoon to Dave, or as you may know him, Mr. Goonaholic. Hello, Dave.
Hello there, Chris. Thank you very much for building me up like that. It's going to be a long show, I think, trying to explain my feelings about that one.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it's hard to know where to start, isn't it? So I think what we're going to do is we will go through the game as usual, but there's so many things to discuss and we've only got an hour. So we're going to kind of splice it with a little bit of the general theme of today. Just a quick thing to say. Off the bat, those of you that are in the chat box, thank you for joining us as always. If you like what we do, give us a little thumbs up in the corner there because it makes Danny's special bits go all floppy and oh god, there's an image. Let's move on quickly. But yeah, if you do like us, put a thumbs up. And also, please just respect each other's views. We're all a little bit cheesed off, I'm sure, but if somebody has a slightly different view to you, please just let them have that respect and don't be mean because Jace will be in with his bat. Right, okay, let's get some initial thoughts then. Dave, we'll start with you in honour. How do you feel? We've been here so many times, but this feels like another low, doesn't it? 4 successive defeats to a side that, with all respect to Brighton, essentially failed us for the second half because, you know, that's all they had. And yet we still couldn't break them down. And they scored 2 goals that we laid on a plate for them. How are you feeling after that today?
I got to say, it's disappointing that we've lost at Brighton the first time at the Amex. We haven't lost there since 1982. And I did kind of hope that there was going to be some sort of reaction to last week, which, of course, everybody was down. But the fact that we'd taken 2 beatings from Manchester City sort of gave us some sort of an excuse. But you go to Brighton and get outplayed as we were in the first hour this afternoon was beyond disappointing, and you kind of wonder where the last half an hour came from, because it was the first hour it looked as though there was nobody who was going to provide the inspiration, and it turned on something as simple as Iwobi getting a shot away at the goalkeeper in the second half. It was our first attempt. No, Mkhitaryan had missed one earlier. But it was kind of that moment that we suddenly clicked into being a team that wanted to work for each other and deliver something. It was too little too late, unfortunately. What had gone before, as I say, was incredibly frustrating. And tactically, we didn't get it right. But you can't say that that was the only reason, because you have to have those 11 players turn up and fight for each other. They didn't. That was the long and short of it.
Yeah, it was very, very well put. They didn't fight for each other, and that's something I definitely want to address. John, same question to you with a slight variation. Were you remotely surprised? I mean, you know me, I'm always the king of positivity. Even I didn't think there was any way we were losing to Brighton. I just didn't. I thought we'd get some sort of reaction. We got something second half, but are you at all surprised by that performance and that result, given what we've had 3 successive defeats?
Not really. I mean, considering our away form this season, it's been awful, really. I think there was a couple of seasons ago where we were really bad away from home and then good at home, and we've kind of had that this season. But it's just the players look just lacking any confidence. They don't look like they trust each other on the ball. You know, players not passing to each other. I listened to Arseblog the other day. I had Philippe Auclair, and he was talking to a former pro, watching the recent games against City, and players hiding by, making a run, but making a run so they were marked. And I was trying to look for it today, and there were times in the games where I saw not just one or two players, but a lot of our team doing it as well. Making a move, but making a move into a position where they can't really receive the ball. And that's not, when you get that kind of attitude from players, you're not going to get a response from them. When I saw the lineup as well, I was surprised that Koscielny started. I thought, considering his ankles and the problems he's had this season with them, he's played a lot of football recently. And let's be honest, the Europa League is probably our best chance at Champions League. So I thought maybe resting him might have been, worth a go. But I don't know. Maybe Arsene is of the opinion that probably a lot of fans are, that does it really matter who we pick at the moment, because no one really seems to be performing at their best. I actually thought we started okay in the game, to be honest. Much brighter than City, and I also thought in the second City game as well, the one in the league, that we did okay in bits, but just the defence today was just, again, so poor. And it doesn't come as a surprise to me. I predicted a loss today. The only thing that annoyed me is I predicted 3-1 and Glenn Murray to score first, not Duff, so I didn't get all the points. But it's so frustrating watching it now, and I can understand why fans are turned off from watching the team, because when you go out and expect that performance, and I don't think I'm the only one, I think there's a lot of fans that have that. Why would you want to go out and watch them? And I think that's the other thing as well. I think the players now have got that kind of attitude that they don't expect to win anymore. We've accused them in the past of maybe being overly confident in these sort of games, and it's sometimes cost them. But now I think they're going into the games thinking, are we going to even get a draw? They've just got no belief in anything they do anymore.
Yeah, I think you sum up how I feel a lot of the time, and it's I think we said in the groups a few times recently that I just don't even want to watch sometimes anymore, and that's it's indicative of how probably a lot of supporters feel, and it is tough. We should, before we sort of go into the topics of what we're going to discuss, we should probably just look at the goals individually. Dave, what did you think to the first goal? I mean, there's errors all the way through the whole thing. From a corner, like John said, I thought we started quite well. Well, maybe a slight exaggeration, but we were fairly comfortable. And I think it was the first corner of the game, and I think the first corner that Brighton have scored from all season. Just terrible marking, no contact in the penalty box. Check. I don't know what he's doing for both goals. We'll come back to the other one in a minute. What was your thoughts on the first goal?
I wrote in the blog that I did today that he came under pressure, check, from, I think it was Duffy, was it the 22? You would expect that Brighton to try that tactic. You would expect the referee maybe to be on the lookout for it. And I suppose it's one of those you're going to get 50-50. But there was no question that he powered into the back of, was it Chambers who was back there? And he made contact with Petr, who flapped at the ball a little bit, and ironically it dropped to Dunk, who you'd mentioned our own bright start at the other end just a minute before. Dunk had hit one over his own crossbar, a proper slice, but this time he had a fairly simple, straightforward half volley at the roof of the net. And as you say, the marking was dreadful because there were 2 or 3 players, Brighton players, there with nobody within a yard of them. And you really need to be touch tight to anybody in this league at that kind of opportunity, that corner situation. I thought we let ourselves down badly, and it was a cheap goal to concede. Like you say, Brighton's first corner, and they don't score from corners. That was the day, that was.
Yeah, I think any team that struggles to score a certain type of goal, it's always until they play Arsenal. It always seems to change. Shouldn't laugh, but it's all we can do at this stage. John, at that stage, 1-0 down, little bit of a shock to the system. Our players, I thought in particular, just didn't react. They didn't show any change of emphasis on the game. There was no sort of urgency to get back into it. We just arrogantly assumed we would. And then before you know it, we're 2-0 down. What exactly was Mustafi doing, and what exactly was Petr doing for that goal? Because if either of those two things happened on a Sunday in front of me or anybody in the park, I think those players would be taken off. What was your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I really don't know. It's amazing when you got. I mean, after the first goal was conceded, I think they had another couple of corners where, again, I think Dunk got on the end of one again. Duffy might have, and a couple other people just completely free headers and just totally unmarked. But for the goal, there's one guy in the box to mark Murray. He's the only man you got to pick up. I think in the build up to it, Koscielny and Kolasinac get pulled out of position. Koscielny ends up in left back position. They don't block the cross in the first place, which is dangerous because everyone knows Knockaert is very good. He's got a great delivery. And then Mustafi completely the wrong side of Glenn Murray. Um, we've said it. I've said it loads of times on here this season. If you're a striker and you can see the back of the defender's shirt, you're well happy because you're going to get the jump on him because he doesn't know where you are. So you can't position yourself properly. And then Czech is really indecisive about whether he's going to come for it or not, and ends up just sort of stranded and just stands there and watches it go in. We've been doing it all season. It's just the defense don't talk to each other. They don't stay tight. How on earth you can have your two centre backs so far apart is unbelievable. I mean, there must have been 30 yards between Koscielny and Mustafi at that point. You've got one striker to mark. It's just ridiculous. But that all again stems from you're playing badly and making mistakes, and the midfield in front of you is playing badly, making mistakes as well, which leads you to make an even bigger error and step out at times when you shouldn't, and try and fill gaps that you shouldn't be having to fill in the first place. And to be honest, we were lucky that he hadn't scored again before that, because he got on the end of a corner, and it could have been 3 or 4 by the end of the first half because they had quite a few opportunities. And the other thing as well that happened straight after that goal is, again, we went to a complete shambles. I mean, we weren't great defensively throughout the entire game, but as soon as we concede a goal, you can just see the nerves just run through the team, and nobody wants the ball, and they all start. They're getting it and they're looking for someone to pass to. They don't know where to pass. Like Iwobi was giving it up. Koscielny was giving poor passes out from the back. Xhaka as well. It's just systematic. The whole team has just got no confidence. And the moment you go one down, you're away to a team that's they fighting. Well, not fighting down the bottom, but they're not far off it.
One of the weaker sides, yeah.
Yeah, it's so tight from sort of 10th to the bottom of the league now. And you just, if you're a player in that team, you must be looking around and just thinking, what are we doing? Like, we're losing to, like you said earlier, no disrespect to Brighton, but we're losing to Brighton. Look at the quality and caliber of players we've got in our team, and it's just completely disorganised. It's unbelievable, and it's so bizarre when you see someone like you saw Czech's face when that second goal went in. He's just on the floor, just like completely just a mess, and it just looking around at going, I don't know who to like. Do I even blame anyone? What is the point? Because nothing happens from it. Nothing. There's no accountability for any mistakes or anything in this team. The weirdest thing is I don't know why people still watch us, to be honest, because we've probably said the same thing all fucking season.
Yeah,
it must be tiring to listen to because I get tired saying it because it's the same thing over and over again.
I think Steve has said on a number of occasions, and it is almost to the point where there is no point saying it anymore. The defensive element or defensive coaching is not something that is a strong point of us, and or indeed being done seemingly. So that's definitely something that clearly doesn't work. I can't really understand how we can sign players who are quite good who we make worse, but more on that in a second. Dave, we should just touch on the Arsenal goal, which, in fairness, it was a good goal. A good finish from Aubameyang. What I really want to focus on is the fact that if we're going to get anything out of this season, he can't be a big part of it because the Europa League is what we're all focused on. He can't play in it. But that goal will just give his confidence a bit of a boost. It's a tidy finish, and he looked dangerous throughout, even though yet again we gave him no supply the whole game.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment. And it was the first time, really, since Brighton had got their first goal, never mind the second, but it was the first time that we actually got the ball forward with any purpose, because we'd kind of had that spell where we have the lion's share of the possession. I looked at half time. We had 68% of the ball, but we weren't doing anything with it. It was sideways, try and find a man wide. He passes it back. It ends up going back to the centre halves, and we try to work it down the other side, run into the same brick wall. And it was so predictable, and we've seen it so many times this season. But then finally we managed to get the ball forward, and I think it was Iwobi who cut it back for Xhaka. Xhaka, I thought, rather intelligently elected not to shoot, which he is prone to do when he's in that position, but played a really good ball into Aubameyang, who had the kind of space that we were moaning that the Brighton players had at the other end. It was a clever little flick. The goalkeeper might have done better with it. He got his left hand to it, but it wasn't strong enough. And at the end of the half, that was kind of a couple of minutes before the end, then you had Koscielny's deflected header that hit the post, and we could have walked in 2-2, and you could have been forgiven for thinking the Brighton fans then would have felt properly mugged off. We didn't deserve to be level, but it was a bright finish to the first half, and maybe set up what we saw in the last half an hour. Stay with us, listeners. It will get a little bit more cheerful before we go morose again.
Will it? You know something I don't know. That for me, that header off the post was quite a key part, because I think if we're going in at 2-2 at the end of the first half, we almost set out the second half completely differently, with a mindset of, right, we're level, we can start again. That said, John, second half, I mean, there was a level of improvement. I don't think it could have got worse, if I'm honest. I don't think there could have been anything less than what we gave first half. But there was a reaction. There was a little bit more in terms of sort of build-up play. But I don't know about you. I never really felt that we created anything particularly clear-cut. Really, that whole second half, there was a few ums and ahs, a few missed shots, a few missed opportunities. I think there's the one shot from us, there wasn't there, that Ryan tipped around the post. But yeah, did you ever really feel confident that we would get back into it in the sort of start of that second half?
I mean, not really. I thought the way we sort of responded late on in the first half, like Dave said, was good, and the goal was good. I thought it was kept alive well by Iwobi, and then Xhaka and Aubameyang did really well. But let's be honest, we were very lucky to go in at 2-1 at half time. And although we did improve second half, I thought that was as much to do with us as sort of upping the speed of our passing and our tempo a little bit, as it was to Brighton looking a little bit tired and perhaps running out of ideas. They started doing more fouls than they certainly had in the first half, and weren't passing the ball as well. But for all the possession and all the nice play we had, again, it was what we've said all season: too slow at times, too much through the middle. Players not releasing the ball at the right times, not using the width enough. That was an issue all day today. I thought absolutely, no width whatsoever. I felt a little bit for Callum Chambers, because he's not a right back, so I wasn't expecting a whole ton from him down that side. Kolasinac did well when he got forwards, I thought, trying to open up some space. But, Iwobi isn't a wide player. He's going to want to come inside. Mkhitaryan's the same as well. And Ozil, he wants to play through the middle. He might drift wide to pick the ball up in some space, but he's not going to do tons of damage from out there. And I think, you don't have Ramsey in our team, then it means we lack anyone from midfield making runs into the box that will stretch midfielders or defence. Because, that isn't Jack or Xhaka's game. So it makes it really difficult to open up clear chances. I mean, Matt Ryan made a couple of saves, but other than the Ozil one, I don't think there were any particularly difficult ones. He made the one sort of mistake, the error, like between him and the couple of the Brighton defenders, where they kind of flapped at the ball to get rid of it, but eventually dealt with it. But no, I just don't have any confidence in this team at the moment to rescue things for themselves. And then when you looked at the bench, it's, you look at Danny Welbeck and go, okay, he's going to run all day for you and work really hard, but is he realistically going to score a goal? I thought Eddie did very well when he came on. I thought he worked very hard. He got his head on it. Unfortunately, he couldn't get enough power on the header and direct it well enough. But he tracked back well. He made tackles and was lively and showed all the right attitude. And I think our best chance fell to, was it Aubameyang, sort of late on, the headed chance, but no, sorry, not the header, the volley, but it was straight at the keeper. But that's it. I honestly thought, if anything, we're going to get a fluky goal right at the end to maybe scrap a draw. But that's just not good enough at the moment, to be honest.
Even that speaks volumes, doesn't it? You know,
yeah,
we're happy to take a draw from a side
yeah.
that's promoted, you know.
It's not, you know, credit to Brighton. I thought they played very well in the first half, and second half, I thought they tired. But it's just more of the same. We've seen it all season. You know, fans can suffer losing to a Man City or you know, a really top team. That's fine. And yeah, okay, every now and again, any team, doesn't matter who it is, you're going to lose to an underdog. You saw City lose to Wigan in the FA Cup. Things like that, they happen. But it's when you get continued results. We've had, you know, Swansea, Watford today. You know, Stoke. All these sort of teams, whether you're getting draws or losses, it's happening too often. And it's not just fans that have got no belief in getting results now. It's the players as well. And you can see it. And I think even Arsene Wenger as well, when you saw pictures of him on the sideline, you obviously saw his anger and his frustration. But I think you also saw resentment. You know, he was resigned to the fact that we were probably going to lose the game. You know,
yeah, I thought that.
I don't think he realistically thought we were going to get back into it. And I think that also showed in the City game where he didn't make any substitutions for the 90 minutes. I just think he thought there's no point, you know, it's just not going to make any difference.
Just sticking with you just for 1 second on the team. What did you make of the omission of Bellerin and in particular Aaron Ramsey? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion this week about Ramsey's future. Do you think that's got anything to do with it? Do you think it's purely keeping him fresh for Milan, and the same with Bellerin? Because they were the two obvious names that weren't in the lineup. Do you think there's anything in that?
From what everyone said and what I've read from journalists and stuff, it was. You know, Ramsey hasn't got an injury, but they are worried a little bit about his groin. He's just come back from injury, so we know he's got muscle problems. He's had them in the past. He played the full 90 against City, and he played, I don't know, how long did he play in the final? 70 odd minutes, maybe? I'm not sure. So it's a bit of a big ask for him to come back. And the problem is, you know, with him that he's not going to, you know, play below 100% in games. He's always going to make the runs full speed and full sprint, and he's likely to pick up an injury. So I get not having him in the squad today. Maybe I would have had him on the bench because I think he can rescue a game sometimes from coming on. But I think it is all in on Milan now. Bellerin, yeah, I didn't have a problem with resting him either. To be honest, this has been coming for a while. We've been saying a lot on the radio show, you know, why has Hector not been rotated at all? Because he's played like every game other than the Europa League games. I know we've had slightly less games this year because Champions League and FA Cup we went out early and stuff, but he doesn't still look on it, Hector. And there's other people who could have come in today. You know, I thought Chambers was a little bit hung out to dry at right back today because he didn't get a lot of protection. He was up against a very quick winger, and it's not his position. If anything, today I would have put Chambers in the middle and given Koscielny a rest, just because I don't think his ankles can do that many minutes, and have him fresh for Milan. And then I would have stuck Maitland-Niles at right back because at least he's got the pace. You know, a player who has done really, really well out of position all season this year, Maitland-Niles, who's kind of been forgotten a little bit. So yeah, I don't think there's too much in it. I know lots of people saying about Ramsey, it's because he's apparently the one who leaked stuff from the dressing room. Whether he did or not, I don't think that's why he was out of the squad today. I do think it was genuinely just resting for Milan because I think Arsene realises he is one of our most important players. See, when he plays, you do see that Ozil and a lot of the other team around him play much better.
I love Ozil, but frankly, we'd be better off having a member of the Wurzels in midfield than Ozil today. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to turn this into a podcast too much because I know Danny will slap me if I do, but it does seem a little bit like we can only talk about the game itself so much. I think there's so much that comes out of the game that we have to touch on it a little bit. Dave, I just want to sort of start things with you. The game today left me feeling, I don't know if you remember, two games I'm going to highlight for you. Wigan away. Years ago, Sol Campbell played in the game. I can't even remember the score. I want to say it was 3-1, 4-1. It's towards the end of the season. We were chasing fourth place and we got turned over by Wigan and we were absolutely dreadful. I think Almunia, or was it Fabianski, was in goal that day. It's just an awful day. And the other one, which I'm sure will be more fresh in mind, was the Bolton away game. where we were 2-0 up and then shipped the 2 goals, and ultimately that was the game that cost us the title that season. It had the feel of that to me. It had sort of this sort of sinking feeling of we know what's coming here. At this stage, without sort of going over all the ground we've gone over before, how even the players that respect Arsene Wenger the most, how on earth do they turn up tomorrow and just go back to training ahead of Milan and not be affected by this? It's 4 straight defeats. It's 4, let's be honest, pretty awful performances. And a team that just looks completely bereft of any confidence. How on earth do they pick themselves up after that?
The answer is probably lies in the team disclosures, if you like, of this week to the gentlemen and ladies of the Fourth Estate. There is their performance supports the notion that they are not playing for Arsene Wenger. And if he has lost the ability to motivate them for a League Cup final, and he can't produce a better performance than they gave in the first hour today, that kind of backs up the narrative that the press have been giving us this week, a view that Arsenal is a club where there is no leadership, either from the manager and his coaches or from within the team. Because if you notice, the reports of the meeting are now focusing on the fact that Laurent Koscielny was shown to be human in relation to the story of his kids asking him why Arsenal are playing so badly. There were different interpretations put on that by different journalists, different accounts of whether he actually did or didn't cry. But this notion that's now coming out that the players have said they need to be motivating each other, and they need to do it themselves without input from the manager, is, I find, the evidence of today tells me they're not doing that. So if he has lost the changing room, and it very much looks as though he has, there's only one solution to that, which is something you probably don't want to get into on the match day show. As you say, we need to save that for the podcast, I'm guessing.
Just without going into that, so to speak, too much, but just in your experience, you were, if you don't mind me saying, experienced enough to remember some of the very worst times. I think back to, well, in my lifetime, it was the George Graham end of George Graham's era, the Bruce Rioch era, the Stuart Houston era, and that was messy. You can probably think further back to sort of Don Howe and bloody name escapes me. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Terry Neal.
Thank you, Terry Neal. Does it feel the same, Dave, to you? Is it feeling the same as those days did to you, albeit a slightly different generation?
Yeah, very much so. There's a kind of inevitability about what needs to happen next. The only thing I would say about the current situation is that probably it should have happened before now, and that the board in those days acted very much more decisively when the discontent became clear. At the moment, we seem to be in a position where Stan Kroenke has sent Josh over on a, in inverted commas, fact-finding mission. I wonder exactly what the extent of that is and the reason behind that. And I wonder whether, now that we have a different structure in place to 10 months ago, whether or not he has a greater instruction to look at the future of the direction of this club. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, well said though. I completely agree with that. It does seem to be things moving around in the background. John, in terms of players, and again, looking at the performances today, we've had discussions about particular Granit Xhaka, for example, and I know Steve's brought up the point about how certain players nowadays need to be coached carefully and they need to be, an arm round them. I just want to throw a couple of players at you and just give me your thoughts on how they can get so much worse. Xhaka is one, because obviously you've seen him at his best. Mustafi is another. Danny Welbeck looks like a player to me who is barely capable of. Even when he comes on as a sub, he doesn't look like he's confident in anything he does. And the only other two I want to give you, Callum Chambers is one, because I think he's had a bit of a raw deal. But I just think to myself, why is he in the team when he's not a right back and when he's not a player that we even apparently we're going to keep for 1 minute or another. And the other one is Aubameyang, who's scored a goal today, but yet again there was no sort of desire to put him in the right positions, to play the right passes to him. So my question about, you can focus on any one of those players, and by all means do, but how do we make these players who perform adequately or fairly well at other teams, whether it be on loan or before we sign them, why are they getting so much worse when they get into an Arsenal team, which, let's be honest, there isn't even that much competition for places in our team anymore? Xhaka's a prime example, played every game.
Well, I mean, that is one issue itself, that there is no competition. If you have competition, then that will improve players naturally because they'll actually have to fight for their place. Xhaka, I think, is a player who fans got sold a lie on what he was. They thought he was a DM, and he isn't. He often gets played in a 2 when I think he's much better in a 3. We don't have any width, which doesn't help, because with width, then you see the best part of his game. When he's got, because you see the range of passing he's got. When you look at Mustafi, I think we probably overpaid for him, but he's not by any means a bad centre back at all. I think he's a good centre back. But again, if you're playing in a defence that isn't coached properly, I think it's pretty clear that it isn't being coached properly, and you have a midfield in front of you that doesn't protect you, you have a goalkeeper behind you that you're not confident in either, and I don't think it matters whether it's Czech or Ospina at this point. I don't think there's really any difference between the two. That's going to make you perform badly. I think Callum Chambers hasn't got a clue what's going on with his career, to be honest. He had a very good loan spell at Borough where he played very, very good football, learnt a lot, comes back to Arsenal, told he's going to be sold. Then at last minute, because we couldn't sell Mustafi as well and get someone else in, which is another thing as well. If you're Mustafi, you've been at the club for a year and then been told you can go. That's not going to fill you with much confidence. You can't expect Callum Chambers to play right back, to be perfectly honest. Should be playing centre half. Who else did you say? Sorry. Oh, Welbeck.
Well, yeah.
Welbeck, I think, is a limited footballer, and we knew that when we signed him. He's very hard-working, he's very athletic, and I like him for that. I've got great admiration for him, but technically he's not a very good footballer. And I think the other thing is that you also have to give Welbeck a little bit of, slack, because he's had some really bad injuries since he's been at Arsenal. He's been very unfortunate with injuries, and he's never really played through the middle, which is a position he wants to play. But I think sometimes you have to look at certain players and just say that's your level. I think he could play better, than he does at Arsenal, but I don't think he's the answer to anything. I think he's fine as a squad player. And I think it just shows that there's a breakdown of trust between the players and the manager and the coaching staff. And we've heard about certain players, particularly the ones that have come from Germany, saying about they're surprised by the lack of information they get on opponents and positional coaching and things like that. And if you've had that your entire career, and then you go to for a lot of them, the biggest club they've ever played for, barring, say, Mesut Ozil, who's obviously been at Real Madrid, they're walking into a club and they expect that it's going to be a level above what they've received before. And if it's below that, you're probably looking around a little bit confused and wondering what exactly is going on and what's happening. And if you've asked for help, like apparently the players have, they've gone to the coaching staff and asked for help and said, we need more coaching on this and that, and they're not getting it, then what do you do as a player? I'm not sure what you're supposed to do. I think some players would just leave, or ask to leave at that point, and others will say, oh, I want to stay here, I want to keep trying and working hard. But if you're not getting help from the coaches, then it's not going to work, really, is it? To be perfectly honest. You know, going into games, if simple things like today, you know, whether they were or not, we don't know, but they should be informed by things like Glenn Murray is exceptional in the air, is going to be very hard to deal with. So you will need to make sure both centre backs are on him. Knockaert is got very, very good delivery, so you need to make sure you close him down and he doesn't get those crosses on. Izquierdo is very quick, so whoever is in front of Callum Chambers has got to be coming back and helping him out and double teaming that player, because he's very tricky and he's going to beat Chambers on the turn. It's simple things like that I just don't think are happening, and the more that happens as a player, you're just going to lose all your confidence. And as a manager and as a average Sunday league footballer like myself, at times when we can be bothered to put our boots on, that if you're not confident, then the simple things get harder and harder. You know, what is an easy 5-yard pass all of a sudden becomes I've missed kicked that and it's gone 2-3 yards to the left or the right and I've lost possession. And then your head's down and you don't run as fast and you don't recover as quickly and you're not as aware as everything that's around you. And it just, that goes to every single player in the team and in the squad.
Confidence is a huge part, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But that all comes from results you're getting, the coaching you're getting. And I just think it is, we've said it all season, there is a lack of coaching, in particular off the ball. The other worry I've got now, though, which I think is almost as disturbing, is that when we've got the ball, we don't look very good going forwards at times. You know, we've always been, at least we play nice football, or at least we can score goals and we can attack well. We look devoid of ideas, which when you've got Mesut Ozil in your team and Mkhitaryan and Iwobi, who's a player who gets a lot of stick, but he's creative, Xhaka, who can find a pass, Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, that's really poor, and that's a huge indictment, especially of a manager like Arsene Wenger, who really prides himself on that side of the game. So that for me really, really makes it difficult for me to swallow.
Tom's been saying it, hasn't he, for months? No identity. There's nothing to Arsenal anymore. We don't really know what we are anymore. We're a bit slung from one generation to another. It's just all over the place. Yeah. Dave, I want to touch on the fan base at this point. In light of today's game, there was obviously a lot of audible booing on Thursday. It seems weird to say Thursday. It's a hard game to judge that because obviously there was so little people going and there was the weather and everything. Today, I thought the away support were magnificent as always. And even when we were playing abysmally, yes, there was some murmurings of discontent. But I thought during the game and when the ball was in play, the fans were still very much behind the team, if not the manager and everything that goes with that. How far is this going to go before people start doing what essentially I've said to some people? I've taken some stick for this, but I stand by it. That if you really don't like, if you're really not enjoying something, just don't go. Don't give them your money. Don't spend the money. And I get the people that say, I've got a season ticket, etc., etc. But if you took a season ticket out this season, you knew what you were in for. You knew we weren't going to be winning the league. Let's be honest. How do you feel it is in the support base? When you go, how are you finding it in terms of people? Is it purely down to the manager now, or are there still people that are putting some of this on the players, putting this onto the club as a whole? Because when the supporters are away from home, you still get the impression they're 100% behind the team. It's only when you get home and there's a social media element that you see all the other stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, it's a strange time, in as much as up until probably a couple of years ago, the people who wanted Arsene out and were vociferous about it were very much in the minority. And I think we've seen over the last couple of the years, and I'm as guilty as anyone, if it is something to be guilty about, of finally kind of losing it, not believing in his ability to deliver what we perhaps expect more than, for example, Brighton supporters. I thought there was a wonderful little tweet sent out this morning about be very watchful of or wary of the Arsenal supporters who are suffering badly in 6th place and in the Europa League and winning FA Cups and things when we nearly went to the wall. But you kind of understand now that the majority of people, I think, have come to the conclusion that Arsene's time has run its course, and that is evident in every game that you go to, home and away. I don't make too many of the away ones. I think this season I've done Chelsea and Watford. But you can see the difference in the fan base from now and 2-3 years ago. And funnily enough, Brighton was very much a catalyst for the kickback by those who still believed in Arsene Wenger a few years ago when that banner first made its appearance. And there was a little bit of a kerfuffle around there. I don't think there would have been a kerfuffle around any of the banners today. I think, as you rightly say, there was a vociferous rendition of "We Want Wenger Out," followed very quickly by a rallying call for the team itself, or for the club itself rather, because I'm not sure there's too much faith in that group of players at the moment. But yeah, a significant shift, and there is only one way to bring everybody back together, I'm afraid, and we all know what that is. And it'll be a sad day. I just hope they make the announcement while there are still a couple of games to go, and we can actually unite in showing the guy some appreciation, because there's no doubt he has been the best manager we've ever had, but his time has come.
I felt the same way about Olivier Giroud's departure. I was sort of a bit disappointed that he wasn't given, there wasn't a bit more than just one Swansea game in the pissing rain to say goodbye. But yeah, obviously that's a player, not a manager. Just on the same subject, Dave, just briefly on the situation with what's going on. Obviously, we're sat here at 4:20. There's no changes yet. I still sit in the camp that I can't ever see us walking away voluntarily. If he was pushed, which I think is the only way that this would happen at this stage, are you one of the people that's on board of the idea of a a caretaker situation, or would you rather, as I personally do, if the manager is going to move on, which it seems more and more inevitable that he will, would you rather say, do you know what, we'll stick Steve Bold in charge or whomever within the club and we'll get it right? Because we don't want to be where Manchester United were, do we? We don't want to be having a patsy for 3 years or somebody as a make weight. The next appointment has to be important, don't you think?
Where I was when I was asked this question this time last year, just before we won the FA Cup, doesn't that show where we are? But I thought actually there was a safe pair of hands who was available to us in Ancelotti, who could, I thought, have been brought in for a couple of years to prepare things for a replacement who we would identify in the meantime. Ancelotti has experience of handling difficult situations. He has a track record of winning major trophies. And I'm still of the belief that would be better as a supporter. But if the noises we're hearing out of the changing room have any value in them, it is that perhaps there is an option out there that would rally the team quicker than an Ancelotti, and who they might want to attract on a longer term basis rather than a steady hand on the tiller for 18 months to 2 years. So let's see if that's what happens.
Yeah. I think we can all probably agree that Sol Campbell is the right man for the... No, I'm joking.
And neither is Steve Bold, by the way.
No, agreed. Yeah, I think I'd rather see something a little bit left field than that. John, before we launch into some questions, which I'm sure there'll be many of, I just want to do, while we've got the benefit of your knowledge and experience, ahead of Milan on Thursday.
Yeah.
You and I have watched a fair amount of Milan over the years, maybe less so this season, but certainly in terms of over the grand scheme of things. There's a lot of people on social media that still think, well, now Napoli have gone out, we're one of the favourites and only really Atletico Madrid or Dortmund can stop us. Milan have turned things around big time of late, and they're going to be a very, very tough nut to crack. What would be your kind of rallying cry if you were to be the Arsenal manager now? How would you be approaching that first leg on Thursday?
I really don't know. This almost as if it's a cup final. I guess, this is. I think at the moment the only thing Arsenal can do he can't use the fight for me, keep my job kind of thing, because I think half of the team quite clearly aren't really interested in that. So it's more down to, can you rally them to show performance for themselves, because as much as if they play badly, yeah, they might get a new manager and everything. If you keep playing that poorly, there's no saying that a new manager is going to particularly want you in the team. To be honest, and as a player, you've got to have some professional pride in your own ability and performance. And I think you did see that today a little bit in the way they rallied towards the end of the first half and they improved in the second. That they were somewhat embarrassed by the way they've been playing and how easily they've been opened up. It's a lot harder game than I would have said. If you said to us, "Oh, we'll get Milan in this round," and it was say 2 months ago, I would have been like, "Yeah, despite our poor form, we'll still go through." Milan have really rallied now under Gattuso. It's going to be a very strange atmosphere, though. It's the away leg first, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It's going to be a strange atmosphere because there was the sad news today about Davide Astorre, who sadly passed away, the Fiorentina captain. He started his career at Milan, so all the games were cancelled today in Serie A, and I would imagine that there will be banners and all sorts of things and tributes in the stadium at San Siro for him. So it's going to be quite an emotionally charged game. Whether I don't know if that's any advantage to them or not. I don't really know, but it's going to be an odd atmosphere. I'm not convinced we can do it, to be honest. I just think the way Milan are playing at the moment, they're playing very, very well. Donnarumma's found some form again. Bonucci's finally found his form since he's been there. He's started to form a decent partnership with Romagnoli. They've got academy products up front instead of £40 million strikers in Catrone. Andre Silva's basically been dropped from the team. And yeah, I just think it's going to be a game too much for us.
Have they got any strength on the flanks?
Well, they have Suso, do you remember, from Liverpool, the young guy?
Yeah, he's a different player these days, by the way.
Very, very different player now. He's much more improved. They also sometimes play Barini wide, who, again, not technically brilliant, but in terms of work rate and what Gattuso gets out of him is fantastic. And their fullbacks are very strong. But the real strength now is their midfield. So they've got Frank Kesse, they've got Lucas Biglia in from Lazio, who... if anyone knows, he's Messi's favourite player to play with in the Argentinian team, just because the way he just keeps the tempo in midfield and ticks things over. Çalhanoğlu as well, who was at Leverkusen. Is that right, Chris?
Yes. Yeah.
Who again is a very, very good player, can play wide but cuts in a lot. So yeah,
back in form as well.
I don't expect it to be easy, and they will attack us down the flanks because they have basically switched to a 4-3-3 now. That's what they play. So
good overlapping fullbacks as well in Calabria and Ricardo Rodriguez, who both got very good dead ball. Çalhanoğlu and Rodriguez both got very good dead ball ability, and that's something that we've clearly shown today we can't defend. So that's another worry, I think, for that. But our season essentially it does now. I mean, I've been saying in the group to both of you guys and people I spoke to on Twitter that up until probably before these 4 games, I still thought, top 4 is achievable, because I looked at Chelsea and I looked at Manchester United in particular and said, do you know what, they're not all that. 4 defeats on, even I'm sat here going, we're not making, we've got to fight over top 6 at this stage. The Europa League is, it has to be the focus now. And that's the only thing I can imagine at this stage the owner is keeping Arsene in place for, potentially, because of his knowledge of the European game, and potentially didn't want to disrupt that Europa run. But after Östersunds, even that comes into question a bit, doesn't it?
That's how you got to sell it to the players, isn't it? That you want to play Champions League next year, you've got to beat Milan. Yeah, if they beat Milan at the San Siro, regardless of what people think of Milan now, because yes, they're not the team they used to be, that's still a huge club and a massive achievement to go and do something like that. And that's a real, if you're a footballer all your career, getting to play at the San Siro against AC Milan is a huge thing, regardless of how they're doing or what point they are in their transition to trying to get back to the top. So that is how you got to sell it. And I do expect our players, I would hope they will play better in that game.
could play any fucking worse, could they?
Yeah, I know, you know what I mean. But sometimes in the big games, we have tended to improve our performances and get up a bit more. The other thing as well is in a European game, you get a little bit more time on the ball. It hasn't got the same intensity as
different style, isn't it?
Yeah,
two big clubs, different style.
Yeah, so it'll be. I'm sure it'll be a good game, but I mean, I'm not confident at the moment. It's fair to say.
No, agreed. Okay, let's use up the last 15 minutes or so then with some questions. I'll hand it over to you, John, if you can find a couple for Dave and myself. Start with Dave, by all means.
Yeah. Oh, here's a fun one for you, Dave. From Liam. Were the people calling for Arsenal to go 5 years ago right in the end?
What an interesting question. Thank you, Liam. Well, I suppose you would say the proof of the pudding is in the eating, or some equally bland statement in response to the told you so nature of the question. Yeah, I'm prickly about it.
Yeah, that's fine. I like that. Prickly. Dave could be a manager. There we go. Now we have to deal with those nasty journalists. Right, one from Imperial 109, sorry. At this point, what damage would having a caretaker manager till the end of the season do? I think we kind of talked about that already, didn't we? And we all kind of agreed that if it was the right person, it would probably be for the best. Chris, maybe you, hang on. This one is specifically for you. I've got one. What does Chris think of Jardim as a possible manager for Arsenal? There you go.
For me, he's the perfect fit. He's the one I would turn to. I wrote a blog about Ancelotti coming in, which must have been 3, maybe 4 years ago, because at that point in time I felt he was the right guy for the job, because we were in a position where we had a good squad, and as you know, John, Ancelotti can come in and finish a project or maintain a project. He's not one for sort of rebuilding and starting a whole fresh. Jardim is exactly that type of manager. I'm amazed that nobody has gone for him before. When Monaco were turned over last summer for all their players, I was absolutely amazed that nobody went for him as a manager. For those who don't know, he's worked under both riches and rags at Monaco. You know, he had the money when Rybolovlev was throwing it around Europe, but he's now managed the side when that money's been taken away from him. He's successfully got rid of players at their highest value points at the right times. He's coached players that I looked at the time when Monaco was signing and thinking, really? You're signing him? See Keita for that. John, you'll know all about him at Lazio. Transformed a player. And he's developed players, and we did have quite a good track record in taking managers from Monaco in the past. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. But yeah, I think he's a perfect manager, and I think somebody made a very good point today on the Sunday supplement, which is rare, I have to say. But one of the journalists said at the current state of Arsenal Football Club, I don't think we can be looking at the very, very top table of managers at this point in time. We're still a massive draw, and I think any manager in the world would consider the job. But I think if you went to Max Allegri, for example, and said, hey, come and manage this club, I think he would probably look at you and go, really? Leave Juve for this? No. I think Jardim, let's be realistic, Monaco are never going to compete with PSG. He knows that. So, yeah, I think he's a good one. That said, I wouldn't drop as low as is it Fonseca at Porto at the moment, or at Zenit? No, it is Porto, isn't it?
Oh, I can't remember. I know you mean, but yeah.
Or Shakhtar. Anyway, it may be Shakhtar. I wouldn't take a gamble on a manager, but I think Jardim would be an absolutely perfect fit. Absolutely, and he would be the one that I would personally go for. Him or Sarri, but again, I think depending on what happens with the title race in Italy would be tough one to know. So yeah, bring him in.
John, can I just come back and give Liam the good natured answer that I should have given to his question? I don't believe people were right to want Arsene Wenger gone 5 years ago, because in 2013 we were just coming out of a 7-year drought, 8-year drought, and a period of 8 years in which there was very little money to work with, and the star players had to be sold every year to balance the books. In 2013, the newly negotiated deals that we had with Puma and with Emirates kicked in, and the club had some money with which to work at last, and there was no better man at that time to be given a chance to rediscover his former glories than Arsene Wenger. And that he won 3 FA Cups in the next 5 years, was, I think, tribute to the level to which he tried to get back to. I think the last 2 years, his failure to do that has been evident. And so I think the last 2 years, you're right, 5 years ago, no, I won't have it.
And briefly to tackle the end of that, completely agree with what Dave said. The other thing as well is that 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, we were all talking about this. There were 4 other clubs that hadn't moved past us quite as much as they have to this date. We didn't have to compete with a Guardiola City, a Spurs with a new stadium, albeit they'll always be behind us in my opinion, but that's just me. And a Manchester United under Mourinho, and a Liverpool who, for all their failings, have now gone on a level. I think Chelsea are probably, ironically, the only club that has maybe stagnated a bit this year, but they still won a title last year. So everyone has gone past us, and we're still sort of stuck in the station looking at the train as it disappears into the distance.
A couple more questions and then we're done, because we're trying to stick to the 1 hour. I know we went very late on the City game. I think we did about an hour and 40 minutes. Unsurprisingly.
All good stuff though.
Fully knows
therapeutic.
Yeah.
At what point the board would say enough is enough? I'll take that. I think there's people on the board already thinking enough is enough. I think the issue is Arsene, I don't think will walk away from a contract. He is look, he genuinely wants what's best for the club. The issue is I think he thinks he's the best man to do it. Which is arrogant in my opinion, but you kind of have to have that arrogance about you to be a manager. I think there's people on the board who would remove him, but ultimately the final say on that will come down to Stan Kroenke, and he's a big admirer of Arsene. So Gazidis and Josh Kroenke and other people on the board might want Arsene gone, but ultimately it comes down to Stan. Will Arsene do what everyone's saying, the honourable thing, and say walk away? I genuinely don't know, but I think the board are in the position that basically if Stan says yes, then they can do it. But I don't think any of them actually have the power to pull the trigger themselves on that. One from Fly KJ for you, Dave. Do you think the players are downing tools like Chelsea did a few years ago under Mourinho?
Oh, I so wish I didn't have that question. I think
I'm glad you've got it.
The evidence of your eyes tells you that that's the case. That it supports the reports that have come out in the week suggests that it is the case. But I kind of really don't know that for sure, but it doesn't look as though they're putting in a shift at the moment, does it? Is my view at the moment.
It feels slightly different to the Chelsea thing, because I think despite the players clearly being frustrated with Arsene, I think they do still respect him. Whereas I think you saw at Chelsea was the players hated Mourinho by the end of it. And they really did, and they were just like, if we don't do anything, we know he's gone. Whereas I think you see in games that the players do still try at times, not all the time, to be fair. I think there are times when they completely go missing and they do, they make the token runs and passes and stuff to, stat boost. But I think they have enough respect left for the man because, he is a very decent guy. And I said it on the last radio show. I said I get really annoyed with him, and then I see him in a press conference, not post match these days because they annoy me, but before a game or just an interview with like ex-pros and stuff, and I sit there and I can't not listen to him. He's intoxicating the way he talks about football. He's great to listen to, and that frustrates me as well. But so I think it's that the players still have that little edge of respect. So it's not quite the Chelsea situation, but yeah, I do think they're not performing to the same season. Gazman Jones, is our season so bad that we've turned John Gray? Yeah, Gaz, I wish that was the case, mate, but I've been grey since I was 18. So It's probably increased the number of grey hairs, to be fair. But yeah, oh dear, I'm going to be 34 this year, so I'm glad I've still got black hairs left. Is there any other questions in the chat? There's lots of people suggesting different managers: Conte, Howe, Henry, Vieira. Yeah, look, they're all great names, and some more realistic than others. I don't think any of us really know who's going to get it. You know, Josh Concrete's a big fan of Henry, but I don't know if that's a goer really. There's talk of Arteta as well, and yeah,
it's all largely irrelevant until we've got a decision to make, isn't it? That's the thing. And I know, I appreciate everyone speculates. We all have social media accounts. We all talk in pubs and at work and stuff like that. I tell you how I'd like to kind of end the show. Actually,
there's one other question. Sorry, Chris.
No, go for it.
For our very own Josh, who was at the game today. In the Brighton end, I'll add the scumbag.
Oh. He's as bad as that Ellis guy.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But he did ask, is Chris feeling okay after he got knocked out by Kolasinac today?
Yes, I can confirm that both myself and Johnny Depp's younger cousin are fine. Yes.
It was shocking when I was like, hey, it's Chris. Schlotto is Chris. It's amazing.
If I didn't have the highlights and maybe was slightly more rugged, maybe, yes. But no, I've had all the jokes, so thank you for that. That's been very kind of you. How I wanted to end it was kind of just almost getting a statement from us three, because I haven't been on for a while, and Dave hasn't been on for a while, and John, it's always nice to get your sort of thoughts on where you are. So what I'm going to do is just give you an opportunity just to give a sort of a statement about how you feel currently, and I will just kick us off by saying a little bit the following, really, in that a lot of people who specifically interact with me on social media or speak to me, this is outside of ABW, because obviously we talk on a daily basis, but a lot of people, including one gentleman who I won't give the benefit of a name check because frankly he's a horrid human being, but people have tweeted me, sometimes abusively, sometimes genuinely, and sort of said, how do you feel now about your god Wenger, or your rimming Wenger, and all these things that you constantly get when you have support for a manager that other people don't. And I'll simply address those people who ask me for my opinion on it now by saying that, yeah, I have changed my opinion to a degree on where we stand. I've always been, much like Dave, I've always been keen to support what we have in place, keen to keep the positives in a largely dark cupboard. I like to try and find the light, because I try and find that sort of good side of all the bad, because let's be honest, we've all got lives, we've all got things going on in our lives. Football is not the only thing, but it's a huge part of what brings us all together as a community, and I appreciate our fan base is divided. But at this stage, I do think change is inevitable, and I do think that the time is right. I really don't want Arsenal's legacy to be tarnished. I know there are a lot of people who say that it already has. Like Dave said, I don't personally think that would happen if he was to make the decision to move on, or if the club were to make that decision for him. I still think he'd get plenty of praise, and I think there'd be plenty of love if he did what even I can see now is probably the right thing to do. And it's a shame that it's come to this stage where this season has been so bad. And also, like Dave said, yes, we're not Brighton. We're not a club that's on the verge of extinction. We are still one of the biggest clubs in the world. We shouldn't be self-entitled, but the time has come now, and Arsenal has to look at things from a grander scale and realise that it's not just the club as a whole, but it's the players that are now affected. It's the dressing room. It's the coaching staff. The whole thing needs to be started again, and the hierarchy behind that decision need to grow some balls, and quickly, because this can't go on. And if it does, they'll lose a lot of very, very loyal supporters. And I'm sorry to say this, but even people like myself who supported the club for over 20 years will now look at it and go, do you know what? I could do some hoovering this afternoon, or I could watch Arsenal. And today it was very, very close between which I did. So, and that's a sad state of affairs. But Dave, how are you feeling? I mean, just give us your summary on how you feel and where you want to go from here?
Well, slightly different, because when you've followed them for as many years as I have, they're kind of deep in there, very deep. And I've seen, obviously, much worse Arsenal teams, much worse Arsenal managers. As the Brighton guy tweeted this morning, if sixth is being in a bad place, then we need perhaps to rethink that. But I do get why people are so very frustrated, particularly younger people. We've got to accept now there are 20-somethings out there who have never seen Arsenal compete for the title or go past the last 16 of the Champions League. And so they have a completely different perspective to what you and I might have. I will always follow Arsenal Football Club. I always support Arsenal Football Club, but that doesn't mean I have to show blind faith in the current employees at the club. I have lost faith in one or two of the key ones. And so, yes, I think something needs to happen. I think the people sometimes say you shouldn't bring the amount of money that's in football into the equation these days. I disagree. A day at the football these days is very expensive. We're cutting off the younger supporters. We're denying them access to the stadium because we're filling it with old fogies like me, who are the only people who can afford it. And that is the part of my love for the club that might change. There is a point in the future when television is moving so many fixtures away from Saturdays and even Sundays that I will very definitely be reviewing whether I take on a season ticket or whether I rely on my silver membership to pick and choose my games. I think I've earned the right by now. But yes, I think the club's in a position now where change needs to happen. And you're quite right. Someone in Highbury House has to grow a pair. John?
Yeah, no, I think you guys summed it up brilliantly. I mean, but all I can do is echo, what you just finished on there, Dave. I just want someone from the board now to come out and make some sort of statement, whether it's whether it is we're getting a caretaker to the end of the season, or Arsenal is in the summer we are getting a new manager. I don't even care if they announce who the manager is, if they say they're not allowed to say because he's got a contract with someone else or whatever. It doesn't matter. I just think they need some feel good atmosphere, and I think for even the people who have wanted Arsenal out for a long time, like myself, I've wanted them out of the club for a very, very long time. I will happily cheer and applaud him when he leaves. I would happily cheer and applaud him for the rest of the season, because he deserves that respect. Because I am not as old as Dave, believe it or not. I know I've got lots of grey hairs, but I've been lucky enough to see probably the best football that I might ever see an Arsenal team play under Arsene Wenger, and I can never thank him enough for that. I've seen lots of bad football as well, so you take both sides of it as a fan. That's what it is. The only thing I would say past that is to end on a slightly cheery and funny note. One, Zinchenko has just absolutely killed Victor Moses. Sorry,
he really did, didn't he?
But if Arsene does stay, then all I want from this summer is just go all out, bring back Denilson, Bentner,
Alberto Mendes,
Simon, everyone. Bring back Andre Santos. Let's go out last season, full banter era. Let's have a right jolly up and a good laugh about it.
Get the band back together.
Yeah, get the band back together.
Frimpong.
Oh yeah, bring back Frimpong. Yeah, let's really go out on a big high.
Could even dig out Fabian Caballero. I'm sure he's sort of doing something somewhere in Colombia or somewhere, isn't he? Maybe Paraguay or yeah.
Full banter bus just for the fun. But no, honestly, it's gonna, whatever happens, eventually change will happen, and that's the thing as well. I'm quite excited because I experienced as a fan George Graham, then the very short tenure of Bruce Rioch, and Arsene Wenger, and that's all the managers I've ever known at Arsenal. So the fact it's coming to an end and it's a new era of football where managers don't tend to stay at clubs for particularly long, for me it's exciting. when it does happen, when the change does happen, because I don't know what we're going to get. I don't know what style of football we're going to play. What kind of players are we going to sign? Who the manager's going to be, what the club's going to look like. That's exciting for me, because it has been the same for so long now. So if you try and focus on that part of it, I suppose you can find some sort of happiness in that.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and I think we all agree that whilst we all would like to see some changes at all different levels of the club, we'll always support Arsenal no matter what, and we'll always be here to take your views. And I'll actually end with a rather lovely comment actually from Kman1867, who's just written, ABW, the best post-game show available, level-headed views, respectful, classy. Thanks for being here during the new Arsenal low. Obviously, he doesn't mean when Jason's on. I appreciate that, but every other time.
We must very quickly say Tuesday night pod this week because of the Europa League. Obviously,
yes.
Holick, you were back on, I believe.
I am indeed.
Double dose of Holick. Mr. Hillwood is on. Danny and Mr. Fife is back as well. So yeah, and Jim Howson. Yes, I don't care. I would absolutely shake Joachim Löw's hand. I have no shame.
I'm not sure I would. Certainly wouldn't sniff it. But yes, and just to finish off as well, big thanks to all of the regular guys who've stepped into the radio show when I've been away this year. It's been a bit manic for me the last 8-9 months due to work commitments. So to Jace, to Josh, Ellis, no, fuck that guy. Everybody else, Carl. Obviously yourself, John, and anyone who else I'm missing. I'm sure I'm missing others, but everybody who's stepped in to do the radio show, thank you very much from me to you guys. So we really appreciate it. And of course to you lot in the chat box, you're all bloody wonderful. Yes, Bavia, even you. So we will draw the show to a close there. Thank you very much for tuning in. Try and enjoy your Sundays, people. I know it's difficult. I know it sucks, but just go and do something nice. Go for a little walk or cook a nice big roast dinner and keep it Arsenal and keep smiling. All right. We'll be back on Tuesday with the podcast. And if you're going to Milan, have a safe journey. If you're watching at home, just keep getting behind the boys. That's all we can do at this stage. And let's hope that we can get something out of this blooming awful season. So until next time, my thanks to Dave. Pleasure to have you on, Dave.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not going to say I enjoyed it, or I enjoyed the show rather better than the match, though.
Amen to that. You're always welcome, you know that. And thank you, John. Pleasure. Thank you very much for hosting the call as well. Thank you all.
That's all right. Cathartic as always.
Oh, yes. And thank you to you all for having me back as well. As I say, we'll be back on Tuesday. But until then, keep smiling. Worst things happen at sea, apparently. Night, night.